Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Marco Jure Show. It is Friday, November 28th, 2025, the last show of November, and next week we hit December as 2025 comes to an end. I can't believe it. It's happening already. But thank you for tuning in today's show to end your week, end your Thanksgiving break, and of course to hear all the relevant groundbreaking news here in America and around the world, the only show where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Don't forget to follow the show, share with whomever needs to hear the podcast to help make everyone hear the truth so we can make America first again. Let's hope that happens. And by the way, I hope everyone's ready for the best hour radio has to offer. Uncensored and ready to go as always. I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving as well. I just want to say that before we start today's show. And again, thank you to everyone who listened to yesterday's broadcast about the history and meaning of Thanksgiving in America as well. But I want to take everyone down memory lane just for a little bit, just to start the show off today with some fun. I'm going to go back 5 Thanksgivings ago and remind everyone listening what a complete, disgraceful, lying tyrant Gavin the Tool, Newsom actually, is and actually always has been, to be honest with you. The Gateway Pundit posted this yesterday. Said Newsom's 2020 Thanksgiving rule should remind us what the idea of a true authoritarianism looks like. Remember how they have the No Kings rallies in the streets now? They warn us of course, what President Trump is, and of course he's one executive order away from turning America into a monarchy. Moving us away from a democracy, of course, regardless of the fact we don't even live in a democracy. But let's go back to 2020. Let's not go to 2028 yet, where Gavin wants to become president. 2020, let's go there first. We all know Gavin wants to become president. That's why he's doing what he's doing in California. Gavin Newsom, in 2020, complete government overreach. What did he recommend you to do with your loved ones on Thanksgiving? Did he say, have a great Thanksgiving, be safe, we leave everything up to you? No, he didn't do that, did he? What did he do instead? This piece of garbage. What did he do? Now, he came out with these ridiculous rules called the New Safety Guidelines for All Private Gatherings. Now, why the government should be telling you whom you can gather with is beyond me, but he still put this out anyways. And again, not public gatherings, not organized events, no private gatherings. None. None at all. In fact, the rules were stunning in their scope. Here's what they said. It said no more than 3 households could gather. So let's think about it. Let's say, I don't know. Let's say you have your grandparents coming over. Let's say your parents. One of them has 5 siblings. They always come over every year for Thanksgiving. Well, you have to cut out an additional 2 of them now. They can't come over. They are excluded from coming over. Regardless of their health status, regardless of anything else, they can't come over. It's only got to be 3 people. And where they come up with the number 3, who the hell knows? And every gathering had to be held outdoors, by the way. So you can't be inside your own house. That's forbidden. The ruler has claimed what is important, and he says that you cannot gather inside your house. And Californians were also told to wrap up their Thanksgiving celebration within 2 hours. So by the time someone first steps in the door, actually, they're stepping in the backyard, apparently. Or maybe the front lawn, who knows? Maybe you're in the garage, I don't know. But it has to be 2 hours. 2 hours is the key. And at 2 hours and 1 minute, that's when COVID would strike. Everyone will get sick, and God knows what will happen then. That's what they tried to sell you, as the fear-mongering continued on, as 2020 continued on. Guests could only enter the house, only to use the restroom. And it was only if it was frequently sanitized. Mask had to stay on at all times, even for brief moments, even though you're outside. And the brief moments where you're eating, drinking, then you could take it down. And then you could pull it down just a little bit. But then as you're chewing, hey, put that thing right back up. How disgusting, by the way. What a sick, it's disgraceful. And even then, you had to remain 6 feet apart from anybody outside of the household. One big sip or bite, was finished, you had to put the mask right back on, 6 feet apart the whole time, no hugging, no giving anyone kisses, no nothing, no contact. Singing, shouting, chanting, strongly discouraged, of course. So therefore, no praying, of course, at the dinner table. Don't do that. And people insisted on doing them. If you are going to do this, you had to keep your voices to a normal speaking volume while wearing a face covering, of course. So here you are. You're outside. You're 6 feet apart. You can only have so many people showing up. What the hell is the point of it? What's the point of the celebration at this point? There isn't one. Even sitting arrangements were regulated, 6 feet apart in every single direction. So you really can't even sit at the same table as certain people. How big is this backyard, by the way? I mean, it gets ridiculous as time goes on. Food then had to be served in disposable containers. So communal dishes were strongly discouraged. Hand sanitizers need to be every single place available for constant use. I mean, you just had to bathe in this stuff, folks. Just bathe in the hand sanitizer. And again, this was not health guidance. It was a lifestyle control. None of this was rooted in any science of any kind. We know this now indefinitely. I've talked with you about this in the past. The masks didn't do anything, right? The pores in the masks were obviously bigger than the COVID virus itself. So the masks weren't going to stop anything except for your consistent airflow. That's all. Again, you can look up bacterial pneumonia if you don't believe me. All the stuff that gets on the mask between, obviously, the inhaling and exhaling. It's disgusting. And obviously, raising your carbon dioxide, levels in the body, raising the acidity, not a good thing, folks. Never a good thing there. But the 6 feet apart was the most ridiculous thing, I think, of all of it. This whole concept came from an 8th grader. I know some of you are going, what? No. Yeah, an 8th grader. Dr. Robert Glass at the National Institute of Health. His daughter did a project at some science fair, and she came up with the concept of social distancing. And for some reason, they came up with the number 6, and they ran with it. It's not science-based in anything. Zero aspect of it. So, we're told all these things, and I don't know if anyone abided by this. I pray to God anyone did. If you did listen to this idiot, shame on you. And if you didn't, congratulations. You are free of your own destiny, it appears to be. But how do they keep electing this jerk? That's what I want to know. How do people keep listening to this guy? How do they keep letting him speak to them in such a manner where he acts like he's this person that actually gives a damn about people's choice? And, of course, maintaining a Democratic election when he just stole 5 seats from the Republicans, most likely, in the next upcoming election in 2026. How does he get away with this? And by the way, just to be clear with you, on November 6th of 2020, this dunce was sitting shoulder to shoulder in the French Laundry restaurant up in Northern California. I think it's in Napa. I'm not sure exactly where it is. I just know that the entrees, I think, are $300 a plate, something ridiculous like that. He's sitting with the California medical lobby, working on all these provisions for you to control your life. No one's wearing a mask. Everyone's shoulder to shoulder. There's no social distancing. And there's Gavin Newsom, high on the hog. Probably paid for by you, the taxpayer, too. I would love to know that. But that's how ridiculous this whole entire thing was. So what, it was okay on November 6th to sit shoulder to shoulder with a large group of people in a fancy restaurant? By the way, they shut down the restaurants as well many, many times throughout COVID. That was also asinine. But here he is a couple weeks later. You can't have Thanksgiving, folks. Just stay by yourself. Don't practice. No thanks anyways. Just do what I tell you to do. And that's Gavin Newsom in a nutshell. A complete tyrant. So I wanted to bring this up to you just so we, sometimes in America we forget things, and I don't want you to ever forget how tyrannical Gavin Newsom is. So we can add that to the list of reasons why Gavin Newsom should never become president. Yep, there it is. COVID 2020. Gavin Newsom. The dumbest schmuck to ever live. All right, let's go into our weekly economic update, not waste any time. Lots going on here, despite a slow week for the news. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ were up slightly today on Friday, but looking to grow, gradually, due to the forecast of lowering interest rates next month. print out more fiat currency, all that nonsense. And of course, loaning out more money from the government. That will expand, of course, GDP will get higher as a result of it. So, stock markets not looking as consistent as what we're seeing in Main Street. How do the two differ? Well, they differ drastically. We're seeing the market, generically getting, pumped in with all this money, of course. But what does Gerald Celente tell us of the Trends Journal? He said on Wednesday, brilliantly, by the way, as always, he said that the current prospects for conditions are worsening in America. The ADP report came out this week and said that private companies in the United States lost an average of, get this, 13,500 jobs per week. As if to say a lot of people. And again, you wonder why Mamdani won in New York City. How did the communist dunce win in New York City? Well, this is why. There's no opportunities, folks. This is what it comes down to. Trump has about 5-6 weeks to turn this around, folks. He's got about that time span to fix the mess that we're seeing right now. And again, put America first and not last. And if he doesn't, we're going to see the Dems take the House back in 2026. That's what it's going to come down to. So he's got to do something. Now, they're hoping, again, by lowering interest rates, again, it props up the market. There's more money in the M1 money supply. Things expand. Things look good. Prosperity comes through. Here's the thing. He's got to bring jobs back to the country. He's got to bring good-paying jobs back to the country. He can't flood the country with H-1B visa holders, which is what he and his government want to do for some stupid reason. I have no idea. But that's the difference. See the contrast. You see the Wall Street version of it, like slightly up today. Everything looks, good, whatever. Great. If you're invested in that, great. You're going to do a little bit better this week. Congratulations. But what's happening on Main Street is the exact opposite. You're seeing the private networks not working. They're laying people off. They're downsizing. And a lot of it is because of government uncertainty. We don't know what the hell's going on here. Now, there is some good news, though, in the trading, of course. Good news hitting gold this week, hitting a 2-week high. I mean, looking good here. Roughly up 3% this week over last week. And again, this goes back to what I was just telling you earlier. The reason why this is happening with the stock market is because they expect a market expectation that the Fed is going to lower interest rates. What happens is the Fed lowers interest rates, the value of the dollar goes down, and as that happens, the price of gold always rises. So again, it's a simple concept. Dollar drops, dollar loses value, gold goes up. One holds value, the other one does not. Again, I told you it's a fiat currency. So, it's a good time to be bullish on gold, I think. And again, I'm not giving any financial advice. I'm not telling you what to do with your money or what have you. But I would look into gold. I would talk to your, financial planner or whomever guides you financially and actually talk to them about investing in gold. Because again, look at the price. It's going up. Now, conversely, silver hit an all-time intraday high record to $54.30 an ounce today, up 11 cents. I'm sorry, 11% this week, outpacing gold. Fantastic. So we see our two precious metals in these markets, and they're both rising. What is that telling you? The dollar's dropping out, folks. Brent crude had a rough week this week due to an outage that disrupted trading for the WTI, which also affected other energy money markets as well. And again, on track for its fourth monthly loss, trading at $62.87 per barrel, down some 14% from this time last year when it was trading at $76.10 per barrel. So, oil's dropping off, folks. And again, for much of the same reasons, we're seeing global recessions around the world. That's what it's coming down to. And again, you're pumping out more oil right now, so you have higher supply with the same amount of demand. Prices are going to stay stagnant or just continue to drop. Real estate markets, we have many more homes on the market for sale. We also have mortgage rates under 6.64% for 16 straight weeks now, giving the illusion that the prices are coming down on paper, of course. But in reality, of course, the price of homes still remain high in America. And don't forget, the housing bubble will burst at some point soon, but it hasn't crashed just yet. We talked about this before. Finally, let's talk about the Consumer Confidence Index for this week, dropping to 88.7, down 6.8% from a month ago. Yep, lowest since April of 2025. We all know what happened then, with the tariffs being issued from President Trump, and of course, this effect that we continue to see as a result of that. Again, giving a bleak outlook for our current economy and, of course, future projections. And by the way, just to be clear with you, no job reports this week, no unemployment rate reports this week, no layoffs, except for what I gave you from the ADP. GDP will be out on December 16th as well from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, so we'll keep an eye on that as the time comes. But right now, this is a decent outlook on the economy. Nothing's getting better. Everything seems to be getting a little bit worse. And, of course, the confidence in that market, particularly the job market, continues to weaken. So I'll say it again, just so we're all clear on this. Trump has got to turn this around. If he doesn't turn this around, we're going to see the Dems take back the House at least come 2026. So he's got to get Scott Bessent on board. He's got to get whoever runs the Fed on board. And they've got to fix this. They've got to show us these investments. How is Saudi Arabia going to invest in the United States? Where are the jobs going to be? Whom? How many? Where? We need to hear about all this. Otherwise, you're going to continue to see things continue to get a little bit worse. Last month, I read to you that the unemployment rate was 4.4%. When Trump took office, it was 4%. So over time, things have gotten just a little bit worse. Again, I'm not saying Trump caused this, but he's not making it any better. And a lot of it, I do believe, is coming from these tariffs. That's what my estimation is. You can disagree with me on that, but again, the evidence shows, as a result of what we're seeing right now, things aren't getting better. Private companies are laying people off in larger numbers. And again, as this AI continues to come into the purview of America, we're seeing this happen more and more and more. So keep an eye on this stuff, as I told you before. And again, do your own research too if you don't believe me. Let's go now to probably one of the saddest events I've saw since Wednesday. And again, I didn't talk about this yesterday because yesterday's show had a specific purpose, of course, about the history of Thanksgiving. And again, I hope all of you that listened enjoyed that. Unfortunately, on Wednesday evening, there was an attack on two National Guardsmen in D.C., where this Afghan terrorist suspect now shot at them, and unfortunately killing one of them. This is the New York Post. You know, I just want to, before I read this article to you, it makes me sick that this violence we keep seeing every couple of weeks in this country, en masse. How much more of this are we going to take? We see this constantly in this country, this political violence, if you will, now directed towards federal agents in D.C. trying to keep the city a safe place. But now we have disturbing new footage showing the moment a national hero, a National Guards member, opened fire on the suspected Afghan terrorist just moments after the alleged gunman ambushed two troops in broad daylight on Wednesday. The suspect, I can't even say his name. I don't even want to say his name. I don't want to look at this guy. It's making me sick to my stomach. In fact, I'm not going to tell you his name. The hell with him. The hell with him. I don't even care. I'm sick of this nonsense. I'm sick of the open borders. I'm sick of this crap happening time and time again. But the suspect, the lunatic, was on camera and could be brazenly seen wielding his gun as he fired rounds at the National Guards members in Washington, D.C. on Thanksgiving Eve. And again, you see it here in the article. You see the disgusting slob of a gun out. And one of them returned fire. At one point, you see a male guard could be running down the streets as he frantically tries to reload his own weapon. Moments later, images capture the witness show the two guards, Sarah Beckstrom, 20 years of age, and Andrew Wolf, 24, slumped over on the streets, obviously as a result of the shooting by this piece of human excrement waddling around in D.C. Beckstrom's tragically, ladies and gentlemen, died of her injuries on Thursday evening. Her father was by her side. And Wolf is still in critical condition, clinging for his life. Now, investigators have already reviewed the footage, as seen from the traffic cameras, I believe, is what we're looking at right now, that showed the assailant barreling around the corner and immediately firing at the troops on Wednesday afternoon. Police then confirmed one guard member had exchanged gunfire with the shooter amid the chaos, and then troops were able to run over and pin the gunman down on the ground as he was taken into custody. I don't want to look at this guy's face. It's making me sick. Sick! He doesn't belong in this country. Now, the suspect, who was then treated for non-life-threatening wounds, was initially facing charges of simply assault, the intent to kill, while armed, and of course in possession of a firearm, during a crime of violence over bloodshed. Now, but in the wake of Beckstrom's death, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Janine Pirro, announced on Friday that the charges would be upgraded to first-degree murder. Absolutely. How could it not be? Running around the street after federal agents, shooting at them, killing one of them? Of course, absolutely. And I'm glad to say that Judge Janine Pirro and Pam Bondi are now going to be looking to seek the death penalty as a result of this. Absolutely. Absolutely. It should be this way. It's disgraceful what we're seeing right now, this political violence. I've talked to you about this before. We saw this with the shooting in Chicago at the Broadview ICE facility where people were killed. They weren't federal agents, but there were people inside the facility killed by some raging lunatic. And now we see it now in the streets of D.C. again. All this rhetoric being pumped up by the left-wing news media and, of course, the politicians themselves. This is the end result of this, when you have lunatics living in your country. So it's not shocking that this happened, unfortunately. But again, this is being pumped up by dishonest and disingenuous people as a result. The Times brought up this aspect about the case, so I'm going to read this part to you. Again, this doesn't shock me either. It says, suspect in Washington, D.C. National Guard shooting has CIA ties. So this putz, this creep, came into the country back in 2021 after the Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan. And he was in some counterterrorism unit working with the United States. Okay, so he gets to the United States, right? Remember Biden ushered in some several 100,000 Afghans as the country collapsed? Well, this guy was one of them. And at the time I was shouting from the top of my lungs, I said, this is unvetted. We don't know who these people are, and yet they're just putting them on transport planes, and bringing them back to the United States. And one of them kills two federal agents. Shot at two agents, killed one of them as of right now. Look at this. It says, drove across the country from Washington State with the intent of the target of coming to our nation's capital. Look at this. This is sickening. Absolutely. We've seen this before. Remember the lunatic out in Simi Valley, California, drove across the country, tried to kill Brett Kavanaugh in D.C.? It's unbelievable, these people, these lunatics, these schmucks. He arrived in the United States on a temporary visa, though, it says, before applying for asylum last year and having his application approved in April of 2025. So this was this year under the Trump administration. John Ratcliffe, the director of the CIA, said that Lackenwall, that's his name, has worked with the United States intelligence in Kandahar, in the province, just before his immigration to the United States. Oh, he was such a sterling piece of glory to come to the United States, wasn't he? This piece of garbage. This is who we let in the country. Again, it makes no sense to me that we allow this to happen. Look at this. I can't believe this. You know, it'd be unbelievable if it wasn't believable, but when you bring in people that don't share your values, that don't want to become Americans, that don't give a damn about you, that have the prospects of divide and conquer in their minds, again, ushered in by the intelligence community. Why are we allowing this? This guy's an Afghan national. And these people don't belong in our country if they're going to act like this. But the problem is you brought in so many. How are you going to get to all these people now? How are you going to get to all the people that Biden let in through the southern border? some 20 million people. How are you going to get to all these people? What are their affiliations? Do they all want to be Americans, or they want to just leech off the system? I told you folks, Trump has a short amount of time to turn these things around. But it seems like he's grasping the reality that things have to start changing in this country. But I want to play you two clips right now. One is an imam, I believe is what they're called. Again, I'm not an expert on this theology, of course. This guy's speaking in the United Kingdom. You tell me if this sounds like this is conducive to Western values and, of course, Western society. Take a listen.
The future is ours. Every ideal nightmare of a Muslim Europe will come true. They can be as mad as they want. I don't care. America will be a Muslim country. Russia will be a Muslim country. Islam will enter every house, inshallah. But we have to be a part of that change and never, ever apologize. We're unapologetic.
Okay, he's unapologetic. Okay. Does that sound like a guy who's conducive to Western values? Islam will be in every household? You can't do anything about it? This is our fate, ladies and gentlemen? This is how we're going to go down? I'm not going down this way. I hope you're not going to go down this way. I certainly don't think Russia's going to go down this way either. Just I don't know what he's thinking about Russia. Are we going to allow this? Is this going to really happen in the United States? If this were attempted to happen, I think you would see actual civil unrest in the streets. I think this would be the line in the sand where people say, you know what, we've had enough of this nonsense. We've had enough of these repeat recidivist offenders in the streets, killing innocent young women, by and large, endangering the lives of others, being drags on the society. We're sick of seeing the people coming in this country through an open border, not assimilating, putting more strain on the system. Cloward and Piven, again, go look it up. I keep telling you about this. Go look it up, folks. Cloward and Piven. What is it? What's the plan? It's to take down the system. And then you go to Dearborn, Michigan, right? And you hear this in the streets. Okay, so we hear it. This is in Dearborn on the streets. He's saying, Intifada revolution. Now, Intifada is a Palestinian uproar for those in Gaza and the West Bank. And, of course, we all know what a revolution is. And this guy is screaming this in the streets, in a microphone. And I can't tell what flag is behind him, but it's certainly not the American flag. Is this what we're going to usher in the United States? People that don't want to assimilate? People that are going to tell you there's going to be a global intifada in the streets? None of this idiot knows he's standing in Michigan and not the Middle East, but nonetheless, he's still saying this. Should this be taken lightly? Now, some people argue, well, freedom of speech, of course. Really? This is a global call to violence, ladies and gentlemen, in the United States. That's what an intifada is. It's an uprising. It's a revolution. And it's not through words and debate. It's through violence and chaos and divide and conquer. But we allow this to happen, and then we're shocked all of a sudden when people are getting hurt in the streets. It is erroneous to do this, folks. You cannot usher in people from the third world. And again, I'm not saying there aren't great people from Afghanistan. I'm not saying there's great people from every country. There are. But the idea you can just bring in unchecked this mass wave of people that don't share our values. Again, in Afghanistan, some people have never seen a toilet before. That's the sad truth of the matter, but that's the truth. And again, you can bring in people that can't assimilate. Immigration for any country is supposed to bolster the existing society, not to take it down. That's something the left can't seem to figure out in this country for some reason. But it gets deeper than this. It gets worse. Front Page Magazine says Mamdani, Chief of Staff, announces sanctuary city for violent illegal alien felons. So again, New York City is going to become a cesspool. All these criminals are going to just flock to New York City. Why? Because they know nothing's going to happen. The police are not going to cooperate with the given laws. They're certainly not going to cooperate with the federal government. Mamdani's already said that. Well, he calls the president a fascist. Really? Who's the one that's trying to control the means of production in New York City? Donald Trump or Mamdani? And again, violating his oath of office. Look at it. It says Democrats used to claim that they were just providing sanctuary states and cities for illegal aliens. Again, this violates their oath of office. But look at this. Ellie Bisgard Church, for this thing from the church, I think you can imagine, the chief of staff for Zoran Mamdani, claimed that Mamdani's made clear that we will uphold sanctuary laws in our city, and all immigrants, even though they're illegal aliens, he's referring them as immigrants, will be safe in our city. And those laws only allow cooperation with ICE in extreme violent felon cases. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Look who they're releasing in the streets. Look what happened in Chicago just the other day at the shooting of the Christmas tree ceremony. Look at all this nonsense we're seeing. I mean, again, look at these cases. Look who is getting hurt. Who are these people by and large? They're illegal aliens or they're repeat offenders by a long shot. 72 arrests, 52 arrests, 35 arrests. They're all in the streets. They cannot function in society. And again, what's an extreme violent felony to him? Might be different than my example of this. Is there a moderate violent felon? Like a mugger or assaults or rape or mild murder? What is the difference? What is he trying to say here? It's all about soft language to bring down the law in New York City. That's what it is, folks. I can't say it to you any other way. They're not going to arrest these people. But you have people in Dearborn, Michigan screaming Allah Akbar. And you're supposed to say, well, freedom of speech, freedom of speech. Okay, if you're not going to assimilate, though, to the existing society, back in the day, you would be gone. You would be deported. And we used to deport people for this reason. This type of behavior is not welcome here. Immigrants wouldn't act like this. They came here to assimilate. But many, many decades later, what do we see? We see people not assimilating. They're not conducive to the society. They're not willing to be malleable and come into the United States and become Americans and assimilate to the culture, the laws. I told you yesterday on the show, we are a Christian-based nation. Our values are Christian values. They are not any other religion's values. And if that's a problem to you, this is probably not the place for you to be. But here we go. It's, again, the soft language. Yeah. Only an extreme, violent felon. It wasn't that extreme. He just shoved somebody in the, the subway. He didn't realize it, He doesn't know what the sign is. Didn't know the car was coming. He just shoved the guy. The guy looked at him. Guy's probably a racist anyways. We see this, folks, nonstop. The word police going after people talking about rape in the UK, in Germany. And the people talking about it and speaking out against it are the ones getting arrested. Their own native citizens. You think Mamdani's going to be on the side of you? You're mistaken, New York City. You're absolutely mistaken if you actually think that. But the good news is, there is some good news as a result of all this chaos and horror that we see in the streets, and of course the sorrows that we see that our federal troops are being shot in the streets. Brave men and women putting on the uniform to keep our city safe. They're shot as a result of this. They're targeted as a result of this. Targeted as a result of the rhetoric by the left. CNN, though, reports the U.S. will now re-examine all green cards issued to people from 19 different countries as Trump and his administration ramp up immigration crackdown. Well, this is overdue, but why is it limited just to 19 countries? It should be every single country. You should look at all these individuals, all these people, all the asylum seekers. Not just a select few. But again, it's a start. Here it goes on X. Is what it says here from Joe Endlow, the director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. At the direction of the President of the United States, I have directed a full-scale, rigorous reexamination of every green card for every alien from every country of concern. They should all be countries of concern. You had people from 170 different countries come to this country under the Biden administration alone. God knows how many have been here prior to this. And again, if you haven't come here legally, you need to go home. That's what it comes down to. Now, if they want to make a program where people that have lived here, or maybe their parents were illegal aliens, and they were born here, and they are people of value, and again, there are some. Don't get me wrong, there are some. But again, you can't live under the rule of law and work illegally, not pay taxes, take housing that shouldn't belong to you, and then say, well, my only problem was I just came here illegally. Well, that's a pretty big damn problem. Because you can't work without a valid driver's license or ID. You can't get a bank account. You can't get car insurance. You can't buy anything. So you've been, flying pretty good here. Meanwhile, you're eligible for several benefits. I'm sure some of them have taken advantage of this. That's not to say some of these people aren't hardworking, but the idea is you can't have a two-tiered class system in the United States. That's what it comes down to. But the 19 countries that they included on were Afghanistan, Burma, Chad, the Republic of Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Yemen, Burundi, Cuba, Laos, Sierra Leone, Togo, Turkmenistan, and Venezuela. There we go. So will anything come as a result of this then? Now, they say that they're effective immediately, processing all of this immigration request relating to especially Afghan nationals, is stopping indefinitely pending further review of security and vetting protocols. This should be shut down indefinitely. Indefinitely. Stop all immigration in this country until we can get a grasp on the illegals in this country. That's something important. And, of course, lower our unemployment rate. Again, if you have an unemployment rate, why do you need to keep bringing people in this country? It never made any sense to me. If you have people that can't work because of some reason or another, of disability, that's one thing. But if you have people actively looking for work and they can't find work, and you're like, you know what? We need to bring in 1 million more people from God knows where. That's a big problem, I would think. But, of course, now we have what Biden did, and, of course, Mayorkas alike, bringing in people from all over the world, opening up our southern border. That's a big problem. I think you all would agree on that. Just be logical about this. It's a big problem. However, the Washington Times has also stated that new legislation will now crack down on hiring illegal immigrant workers and sanctuary unions. Yes, go to the root of the cause here. If people come here and say, hey, you know what, I can't get work, I can't get benefits, I can't get housing, I can't get this, I'm going to get arrested, I'm never going to be able to come back, people are probably not going to start coming here. Just an idea, I think. But now Republicans have now proposed, finally they're doing something, by the way, after being off for God knows how long, saying they're proposing new legislation that would make hiring illegal aliens an unfair labor practice, which it already is, giving the federal government a new avenue to punish these businesses, of course, that recruit them, and, of course, the labor unions that seek to gain them to unionize. In other words, take some of their money and get rich off that. Senator Jim Banks of Indiana and Bill Cassidy of Louisiana said that the bill would now give the National Labor Relations Board jurisdiction to investigate and prosecute these cases. Good. Find them. Find the hell out of them that are doing this. Absolutely. And by the way, they're just exploiting these people anyways. Don't just say it's because out of the kindness of their hearts. They're using them for the cheaper labor. That's why they like this. Now, hiring illegal aliens drives down American wages, and of course it pushes our workers out of good-paying jobs, is what Banks said in a statement. But if employers will not follow the law, we'll use every tool we have to make sure they face the consequences. Good. In fact, throw their asses in jail. I don't even care at this point. I'm so sick of this nonsense. This destroying of our culture, the fabric of the nation. It makes me sick. And it goes on to say, it says that jobs have been seen as a key magnet drawing illegal immigrants in the United States. Again, they're illegal aliens. They're not illegal immigrants. And conservatives argue that shutting off that magnet could reduce the flow of immigrants. Well, no kidding. What did I just say to you? If there's no incentive to come here at all, they're not going to come here. That's what it comes down to. And by the way, it's been happening for a long time. It's happening at least since before Bill Clinton brought in NAFTA. That really pissed off a lot of Mexican farmers, which is why many of them started to come here in the mid-1990s to the United States to work on the agriculture that was predominantly in the United States now, after they were put out of business. Again, an awful position. Again, NAFTA was ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. But again, Bill Clinton did what he did. Same thing with bringing China to the World Trade Organization in 2001. All these bad things that Bill Clinton did when he inherited a great economy from Bush, which was given to him by Reagan, of course. Again, we saw what Reagan did in the 1980s. It really grew the economy in many different ways. And they took that and they destroyed it. That's what it came down to. In a nutshell, that's what the 1990s were probably the last pretty decent, generation of people coming up in the world when things were somewhat normal. And ever since 2001, it's just been absolutely chaotic in this country, especially the out-of-control spending as well. But now they're saying under current law, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement takes the lead on probing businesses that are hiring unauthorized workers. That can include civil audits of businesses, practices of criminal arrests of employers, and, of course, administrative arrest of workers who are not authorized. Finally. So this new proposal titled Putting American Workers First Act, thank God, finally someone's listening to me. American Workers First. When have we last heard that? Never. Now, maybe never in our lifetime, of course, but probably, obviously, in the earlier half of the 20th century, when that was a thing, when it was fine to be patriotic of whom you were. But again, this is now going to create another avenue for investigating and, of course, prosecuting these people that are doing these unlawful things. So the bill would shield employers for unfair labor practice charges for firing illegal immigrants. Well, only time will tell how well that works out. And I want to say one more thing about this. Since we're talking about illegal migration into the United States, this came out today on ZeroHedge. It says fentanyl trafficking rings run by illegal aliens dismantled across Washington state. Now, in an op-ed a couple days ago, a Seattle conservative commentator and radio talk show host Jason Rantz puts a sharp spotlight on what he frames as the overlooked reality of Washington's fentanyl pipeline. The major trafficking networks are increasingly being run or staffed by illegal aliens. He's absolutely right about this, by the way. Not too long ago, I was listening to a show, and they were talking about how the Mexican drug cartels would usher in, I think it was Michael Savage that talked about this, brilliantly, by the way. And again, it's brilliant about what these drug cartels do. You think it's all one-sided, but really they're controlling both sides of the border. And what they're doing is they would usher in these people, mostly Hondurans, and they put them on the streets of, San Francisco, LA, anywhere they put them in California. And they would sell the drugs for them in the United States. So they're using illegal aliens on the streets of America to sell drugs for the Mexican drug cartels. Not too bad, right? This is the reality of the situation now. Because now Rance reports that the federal agents are now dismantled 2 international drug rings in October alone, one tied to Ecuador and the other to Mexico, resulting in more than 18 arrests and, of course, the seizure of millions of lethal fentanyl doses, narcotics, illegal firearms, no one ever talks about that, and, of course, an even improvised explosion device. God knows what that was for. You see how detrimental closing our border is, folks? We should have a secure border. We should have a physical barrier on our southern and our northern border as well. I know we don't think of Canada as a threat, but people still come in from the north. Don't think that they don't. And, of course, we should have our coastline very closely monitored by submarine, by boat, to know exactly who is coming towards the United States, who is coming towards the coast of Florida, jumping off boats and running onto the mainland. We should be watching this. We should be intercepting this. And the people that are coming here illegally or with drugs should be charged and brought back to their country of origin. And again, when you remove the incentive to do this, people are going to stop doing it. It doesn't make sense to bring in drugs to the United States if it's going to get confiscated and, of course, locked up. You're going to lose money on that. Doesn't make any sense. So Rance writes in this central revelation that one of many suspects in this are, of course, people in the country illegally, which goes back to what I was telling you earlier. They recruit these people, they bring them to the United States, they usher them in, and of course they're selling these drugs for them. It's a cartel, folks. They're working for the cartels. So Rance is absolutely right about all this. So again, it doesn't shock me that this is happening, of course. And again, these people need to be arrested and taken off the streets. Hey, look at this. It says here that in the Puget Sound region, the Mexican-connected ring in rural Lewis County tied to 105,000 fentanyl pills and 34 kilograms of powder amounts to, the DEA equates to 3 million potentially deadly doses. I mean, again, we're talking about killing American citizens. This is it. This is it, of course. So he's absolutely right about all this, and this shouldn't be taken lightly. This should be stopped. And of course, he says now it's fair for the public to know that the Trump administration is not wrong about the fact that many of the people that are here illegally are committing crimes, and in that, very serious crimes. He's absolutely right, folks. Absolutely right. Not all of them come here to work. They certainly don't do that, do they? Some of them come here to cause chaos and, of course, destroy everything around it. Let's move on to something a little bit more domestic here in the sense of what's happening with our economy. I know we talked about the economy earlier. I do want to talk about this, though, because it's in Forbes, and I think it's a good article to dive into today. It says here that the defense sector keeps getting hotter, minting a record number of unicorns with skyrocketing valuations this year. Are we in an iron bubble, is what it asks. Now, a unicorn is a new company that's valued, in the purpose of defense startups, valued over $1 billion. In other words, a lot of money. Now, investors are now pouring in more than $48 billion into defense-related startups in 2025, minting 10 new unicorns. God knows what they call them. This year's unicorns make up more than one-third of the defense industry's total active unicorns, which are collectively worth $495 billion. Not a small number. Now, that's double the number of active unicorns in 2021. Again, when investors poured in a record of $53 billion into this defense that looks to improve thanks to low interest rates. Now, while the total number of investments are going into defense tech, usually through drones, the average funding this year is almost double that size, indicating fewer but larger bets from these investors. Again, they're propping this up. This is what it comes down to. They're propping this market up. Because now we have the defense unicorns is only a fraction of today's 500 AI unicorns. This is what it comes down to. They're propping up the AI market. They think it's going to be the next big thing. They also want to lead this. They don't want China or India to do this, who also are investing greatly in these types of startups. Again, but it's a considerable increase from the vanishing few startups that pioneered the defense space prior to 2020, mainly SpaceX, Palantir being one of them, but again, they're all very lucrative as well. Now, definitively, the two mega trends this year were AI investing and defense investing. Isn't that interesting? Again, Palantir is a cutout of the CIA. We all know this as well. So, again, that's something you can look at and understand, of course, but traditionally players like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon are not moving fast enough and creating more startups to win a piece of the trillion-dollar budget. So, again, this money is getting spread to different places, and the AI is what they're really looking at, these AI drones. I've talked with you about this in the past, about what Israel does with their AI drones, of course, and how they use them for combat. We've seen this largely coming out of Ukraine as well, in the war with Russia. So we're trying to get ahead on this. And again, we're trying to diversify this. And again, you're seeing other companies now starting up as a result of what we're seeing in this warfare. Because that is going to be the new warfare, drone warfare. So these companies are taking this and they're really expanding upon this. But look at that. Look at that. So are we just going to be leading in drone warfare? Is that what we're going to do? We're going to be, I guess, Amazon and drone warfare, military spending. Are we going to invest in anything else in this country? That's my big question to you as well. Oh, by the way, Trump actually came out and said something slightly, I think, appealing, to me at least. This is Breitbart. It says that Trump may almost completely scrap income tax due to tariff revenue. I mean, either he's really trying to sell the tariffs, or he's going to smash the IRS into many, many pieces. I'm happy with that, by the way. It says here, President Trump said late Thursday that the United States may almost completely eliminate the income tax due to the rising tariff revenue. Stating that in the next couple of years, I think we'll substantially be cutting, or maybe cutting out completely, but we'll be cutting income tax. I don't think the powers that be will let him do that, but that would be fantastic. So it could almost be completely cutting because the money we're taking in is going to be so large, is what he's suggesting. Now, the Congressional Budget Office said that in June, they projected that the tariff increases will reduce the federal deficit by $2.8 trillion over the next decade. I don't know how true all this is. I don't know who the economics professor is that's looking at this, about the money that we're collecting or even reducing the deficit. But the problem is that we have deficit spending. We're not bringing down the actual debt that, again keeps getting just brought up time and time again. We're already at $38.3 trillion. But here we go. It says here that John Carney of Breitbart says that the tariff estimate covers measures implicated between January 6th and May of 2025. These include a 30% levy on imports from China and Hong Kong, including 25% duties on auto parts, autos, steel, aluminum, a 10% general on a tariff on almost all these other imports. And again, the elimination of a duty-free treatment for low-value Chinese imports. But here's the problem right now. You're paying way more for these products coming out of China. Most of them are cheap anyways. Cheaply made, I should say. But you're paying for that difference. You're making up that 30% levy on imports, the 25% on the autos, the auto parts, the steel, the aluminum. How are you going to build a house now when aluminum prices are 25%? What do you think is going to happen to the value of the house now? They're going to rise. That's just common knowledge. By the way, the CBO estimates that before accounting for economic side effects, the new tariffs will reduce primarily deficits by $2.5 trillion and cut interest payments by another $500 billion for a total deficit reduction of $3 trillion. So, again, reading this to you, we haven't seen this come down yet. We're taking in billions of dollars in tariffs now. Why are we also seeing a drastic rise in the national debt? Well, a lot of it's because the interest on that alone is just compounding itself every, I think it's 180 days. We're seeing this massive spike and just the interest alone being tacked on to what we owe. How do you pay down $38.3 trillion? The only way you could do it is if you're producing a hell of a lot of stuff here in the United States. That means GDP is greatly increasing, and you cut government spending. But every single time we come to a new spending bill, what do? We raise the debt ceiling, don't we? We borrow more money. That adds to it. It's a big, it's never going to get paid off, folks. So while that sounds really nice that Trump's going to take off your federal income tax, which, by the way, is unconstitutional and illegal, it's simply not going to happen. It's not going to happen because there's no way you can pay for everything with just tariffs unless you want the price of goods to skyrocket as a result of that. So again, don't look for that. It's probably not going to happen, but it's a nice gesture to hear on Thanksgiving, I think. All right. We have time for one more article today, and I want to get into this before we go to the weekend. And it's by Colonel Douglas MacGregor, who I greatly value his work, of course. And he wrote this in the American Conservative just a couple days ago. And I'm going to read this to you. It's regarding what's happening in Venezuela, of course. And, I don't agree with what's happening there. And he doesn't either. So no shock there. So I'm going to go over the article. It has some background to it. And it says here that in April 1939, American unemployment reached 20.7%. He says for Henry Morgenthau Jr., FDR's Secretary of the Treasury, this was very bad news. In a private meeting, he confessed to two senior congressmen. He said, "We are spending more than we have ever spent before, and it doesn't work." So you'll recall the New Deal, of course. We have all these new government programs. We just got to get people spending money. That was the big thing. It'll get us out of this depression we find ourselves in. Well, that didn't really work. So after 8 years of this administration, we have just as much unemployment as when we started. An enormous debt to boot. Today, Americans know about the Great Depression and how it ended on the onset of the war in Europe. FDR truly believed that if Britain and France went to war with Germany, the quagmire would make the British and the French governments heavily dependent on on access to U.S. credit markets and, of course, resources, thereby ending America's economic depression. FDR welcomed the stimulus that the war provided, and, of course, which got us into the war. And by the way, might I also add, taking 12 million men out of the workforce, and of course out of the unemployment lines, and putting them in a uniform and sending them off to Europe and Asia, also greatly helped ending that as well. But in 1939, Joseph Stalin hoped war with the West would be a quagmire fatally weakening Germany and its opponents. Stalin believed this development would open the door to a massive Soviet invasion from the West that would supplant Nazism and communism. With communism. And that was his entire goal there. Why do you think he invaded Poland? Thus, Stalin eagerly supplied the German war machine with oil, iron, aluminum, grain, rubber, and other mineral resources Berlin much needed to launch this war against Britain, France, and the Low Countries. By the way, it's important to note, too, that Germany was actively seeking, at the time, for peace between Great Britain, of course. But ultimately, FDR and Stalin miscalculated just how costly and risky the new war conflict in Europe would be. War broke out in 1939, and in 1940, German military power rapidly defeated Western allies. And though Britain fought on, the next year, Germany invaded the Soviet Union, which proved to be one of Germany's greatest mistakes in this conflict, because you can't beat General Winter. Today, the Trump administration faces some of the same conditions that FDR would recognize. Scott Bessent, Trump's Treasury Secretary, confronts a national sovereign debt of $38 trillion. Liquidity strains also persists in parts of the financial system, and the dollar's long-term reserve status is under a significant pressure and scrutiny from the entire world. Now, among the ideas under the discussion by Bessent is a more enthusiastic official embrace of stablecoins. We talked about those on the show many months ago. Cryptocurrencies deliberately engineered to remain boringly pegged one for one to the US dollar by holding equivalent reserves of cash or high-quality cash equivalents in regulated accounts. In plain language, digital dollars that promise never to fluctuate like Bitcoin, but can circle the globe in seconds without even touching a traditional bank. Again, it brings you closer to central bank digital currency. Don't think that it can't. Now, Bessent publicly argues that a well-regulated stablecoins will also extend the dollar's dominance into the blockchain era. Trump also appears sympathetic to this. There is, after all, not enough gold on the planet to return to a metallic standard. And that simply by printing more fiat currency, which is what we're doing now, will further debase the dollar. Wall Street, ever helpful, is delighted to assist in kicking the can a little further. Ideally, a blockchain paved road. Now, meanwhile, President Trump in the White House is charting a new course out for a war, this time in the direction of Venezuela. And has the administration concluded that the rapid conquest of Venezuela could now induce a kind of economic stimulus that rescued FDR's failed policies and, of course, restore economic prosperity in the United States. Now, why is he doing that? Why is he all of a sudden concerned about Venezuela? Well, what does Venezuela have a lot of, folks? They have a lot of petroleum and oil reserves. They also have a lot of gold reserves in the country as well. And their newly appointed heiress to become president, should we successfully conclude a coup of Nicolas Maduro, Maria Corina Machado, said that she'll play ball with whomever puts her in power. Yeah, you see how that works, folks? You see how that works? If they didn't have these rich oil reserves, which are some of the richest in the world, gold reserves as well that we can get our hands on, oil and other energy-based resources, do you think we'd be that invested in Venezuela? About fishing boats that can't even reach the United States, blowing them up? No, folks, it's all part of a larger situation. We still want this. We still want this. We want this. We want the money. And by the way, Colonel McGregor goes on to say, internationally isolated, that'd be Venezuela, sits atop of the world's largest proven oil reserves of 303 billion barrels. Again, not a small number, but again, that's according to OPEC's latest assessment of the country. So, I read this to you, and again, he's got a lot more here. But as the show rings out, the reason why we're so hell-bent on this is not because we want democracy in Venezuela. It's because we want the resources. It always comes down to resources. And by the way, when they can't do anything else for you, as we see right now, and again, as we saw in the 1940s in America, what do? They take you to war, folks. It always comes down to that. They always take you to war when they have nothing left. When they can't sell you anything else, when they can't prop up anything else, when they can't flood the market with enough, stock or what have you, or dollars, they take you to war. Never forget that, by the way. And never forget that war is a racket. And of course, many people will benefit off a war with Venezuela. Just thought I'd bring that up to you. And again, it's a brilliant piece in the American Conservative. I recommend you go read that as well. Folks, thanks again for being here today with me as always. Coming to you live on this Friday of the week of Thanksgiving. I hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you'll share with some friends. Again, a lot of good content in it, so you can learn from it as well and what's happening. Say some prayers for those in the National Guard in D.C. and, of course, our ICE agents on the streets that are bombarded constantly by protesters, by people that wish to see them gone. Have a great weekend, folks. I'll see you Monday. God bless.